Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to be exploring something that is, honestly, kind of eerie. We're looking at what happens when the natural world looks back at you, recognizes you, and actually remembers exactly who you are. We're unpacking a fascinating piece of source text titled The Grudge of the Raven, Corvid Facial Recognition. You know, a lot of times we just treat birds as background scenery, right? Just little creatures flitting from tree to tree, living purely in the moment on basic instinct. But crows and ravens? They completely shatter that preconception. These animals possess a level of intelligence that doesn't just rival other birds, it literally rivals, and in some cases actually surpasses, many mammals. It's wild. We're going to look at the remarkable science behind nature's memory. Because when you walk out your front door, you aren't just observing nature. Nature is observing you right back. And in the case of corvids, that's the incredibly smart family of birds that includes crows, ravens, jays, and magpies. They are paying very close attention, and they're taking detailed notes.
Okay, let's dive into this. The entire foundation of our source material really rests on this exact, incredibly intriguing question. Why do crows remember faces? To really wrap our heads around this, we have to completely toss out that old myth of the bird brain being a synonym for stupidity. Crows aren't just flying around reacting blindly to stimuli. Nope, they're making highly calculated decisions based entirely on evolutionary survival. Crows and ravens live in these incredibly complex social structures, and crucially, they've evolved to coexist intimately with humans. Think about it for a second. Our cities, our suburbs, our local parks, that's their territory too. And in these shared environments, humans represent a huge wild card. We're either the greatest potential threat, or we're a fantastic source of free food. So for a crow, being able to distinguish between a human who kindly tosses them a peanut and a human who maliciously throws a rock, that's not just a neat little party trick. It is a literal matter of life and death. The evolutionary advantage here is absolutely massive. By devoting serious brain power to remembering the specific individual arrangement of your facial features, they are highly optimizing their risk management. To them, you are no longer just some generic, towering mammal. You are an individual actor, categorized entirely by your past behavior.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this formal scientific terminology, Corvid facial recognition, is actually backed up by some truly astonishing real-world experiments. To prove this wasn't just, folklore, researchers, specifically Professor John Marsluff at the University of Washington, conducted a famous and frankly fascinating study. His team wore this specific, highly distinct, honestly kind of creepy rubber caveman mask, and while wearing it, they safely but uncomfortably trapped and banded a bunch of crows on campus. To act as a control, they also wore a neutral mask, which famously happened to be a Dick Cheney mask, and just walked around ignoring the birds. Well, the results were staggering. Even years later, anyone walking across that campus in the caveman mask would be aggressively scolded, dive-bombed, and completely mobbed by the crows. Meanwhile, the neutral mask? Completely ignored. But here's the kicker. The really remarkable neurobiology behind all this. Unlike mammals, crows don't actually have a cerebral cortex. That's the area of the brain we normally associate with advanced cognition and facial recognition. Instead, they utilize densely packed clusters of neurons in a totally different brain structure called the nidopolium. So their brains essentially arrived at the exact same high-level visual processing power as ours, but they took an entirely different evolutionary architectural route to get there. It's a stunning validation of their intelligence.
And this brilliantly illustrates the duality of the phenomenon we are examining today. Science calls it facial recognition, but as the title The Grudge of the Raven suggests, out in the wild, it plays out a lot more like a personal vendetta. So how exactly does this grudge work? Well, the secret lies in their highly advanced social learning and communication. If you wrong a single crow, that bird doesn't just sit there and hold a quiet personal grudge. It goes straight back to its roost and literally communicates your specific facial data to the rest of the flock. This leads to a crazy phenomenon where crows who have never ever even seen you before will suddenly join in on dive-bombing you, all because the threat was culturally transmitted. It spreads like wildfire. In that Marsluff experiment we just talked about, the number of crows attacking the caveman mask actually grew over time. The grudge spread to birds that hadn't even hatched when the initial trapping occurred. We are talking about a generational grudge. It actually led to these surprising, slightly humorous real-world situations where university students and staff literally had to intentionally alter their daily walking routes across campus just to avoid the wrath of angry, coordinated crows. It really begs the question, is this intentional emotional revenge, or is it just incredibly effective, socially learned risk avoidance? Either way, their ability to pass down the memory of your face to their offspring is nothing short of incredible. Let's move to our final thought and see how this all builds to our conclusion.
So the crucial point is this final question. What does it mean to be the subject of a raven's grudge? Let's explicitly answer our main question today. Crows remember faces because their survival depends on highly complex social networks and the ability to culturally transmit knowledge about specific individual threats in their environment. A raven's grudge means that they possess a level of intelligence, memory, and social communication that allows them to categorize us individually. They learn from experience, they absolutely do not forget, and they actively protect their community by warning others about you. It's a real game changer for how we think about our surroundings. It fundamentally shifts how we experience the world outside our doors. It means the natural world is not just some passive backdrop to our lives, but an active, intelligent, observing presence. The impact of our actions, whether good or bad, ripples through an unseen animal network. Thank you for joining me on this explainer. As you head outside today, maybe ponder that profound capability for a moment. And the next time you see a crow watching you from a tree, remember, they just might be remembering you.